Good morning. It's good to see all of you this morning, especially those of you who are visiting with us. We are glad you're here, and we want you to feel at home because you are a part of the family the moment you walk through the doorway of this church. And we want you to come and be with us as often as you can. The reading is from Matthew 25, verses 31 through 46. When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. And before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. Then shall the King say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered and fed thee, or thirsty and gave you drink? When saw we thee a stranger and took thee in, or naked and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick or in prison and came unto thee? And the King shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, you have done it unto me. Then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and you took me not in. I was naked, and you clothed me not. Sick, and in prison, and you visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered, or athirst, or a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you did it not to one of the least of these, you did it not to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. May God bless this reading of his word. Steel axes rang out against the oak and the pine and the birch trees as hardy frontiersmen hewed their way over the Allegheny Mountains into the lush valley of the Shenandoah, down into the valley of the Watauga, and the Sycamore Shoals they rested, built a settlement. And among them were Chucky Jack, John Sevier, James Robertson. Here in this frontier wilderness, they sat down and hammered out a document for freedom. A new spark had been ignited in America. In Williamsburg, in the House of Burgesses, the walls still resounded with that eloquent plea of Patrick Henry, If this be treason, then make the most of it. The French and Indian War had just come to a close. But in Boston, there was a great massacre as the rifles of the red-coated soldiers fired into the crowds, begging for freedom. In England, a small group of men were gathered together at New Room at Bristol, a scholarly, intense man stood before them, concluding the work of the annual conference. He read off the appointments. Having read them all, then he paused for a moment and he said, added to the appointments this year is one more. The circuit of the colonies of America. This is an appointment that must be volunteered for, not assigned. Is there anyone willing to accept the appointment? From the back of the room, a young man just short of his 26th birthday rose to his feet. There was a thrill that surged through him as he thought of the possibilities. He spoke out with a voice that quivered slightly, "I'll go." His name was Francis Asbury. And these two men faced one another. John Wesley, of an aristocratic family, bred in the Church of England, trained at Oxford University, one of the most prolific writers of his time, a great conversationalist, and the leader of a new movement that would revolutionize all of England and ultimately the world. And at the back of the room stood an uneducated man, by comparison, the son of a gardener, reared in poverty, but aflame with a passion for Christ. And the two men joined hands. And a few weeks later, Francis Asbury marched down to the harbor where he would board a ship for America. And in his pockets, he didn't have a dime. He had said goodbye to his mother. He would never see her face again. He would never return to his native soil. He remembered the words of John Wesley, who stood upon his father's tomb and announced, "I look upon the whole world as my parish." And Francis Asbury, a stranger, untried, untested, stepped off the boat of the New World just in time to see his native country go to war against his newfound country, and he would belong to neither, and it would be a time of hiding for his own safety. And that burning flame had to be kept under live coals to keep it from going out until it could come to full fire. In 1783, the first appointment was read, the Holston Circuit. It was the year before the church would be organized as a church. But there was a hungering for the frontier, a drive to go out into the unknown and there establish the known. As America grew great from the ground roots, there among all of the great stalwart trees of the statesmen of this land, there stood alongside them the great statesmen of the church. More than anyone, the circuit riders penetrated the wilderness to make way for the expanding of a great nation, not following in the wake, but driving ahead, leading the way. Jeremiah Lambert came into the valley of the French Broad. Out into the wildernesses of the frontier came those who would settle upon the banks of the Nolichucky and the Watauga, those who would go into the settlements along the Holston. They would penetrate all of the wilderness frontier beyond the Alleghenies, and there would be sung the great hymns of Christianity. And it wouldn't be long until every cabin on the frontier would know the name John Wesley, though they had never seen his face. And these men of commitment and passion carried in their saddlebags Bibles and books and leaflets to be distributed to the people, to be left behind, to say, read and learn. Tabernacles grew up, brush harbors. The camp meeting became a phenomenon of primitive America. And in the forefront of the great brush harbors and the camp meetings were the Methodist circuit riders. And their voices of hope rang true. Bishop Asbury would cross into the Holston territory more than 60 times. In his journal, he would tell about coming through Newport. Nearby is the Asbury Trail that if one is strong enough and willing to follow it, will go through the rugged wilderness that will lead them into Waynesville and Lake Junaluska. And we can only imagine this great man upon his horse, sometimes leading him through the thickets. He slept upon the soil at night, placing a stone upon his head. He went into the primitive cabins and took the hospitality of the people. And on he went. He laid the Asbury Trail all over the wilderness of opening America. He would ride for 45 years. He would travel 270,000 miles upon his horse or by foot. And he would say wearily, live or die, I must ride. And it was in that spirit that the church came alive in America. It was with that spirit that the Methodist movement, once the smallest movement in America, became the largest and most productive religious movement in America. And in the year of Jeremiah Lambert's being appointed to the Holston country, where the French Broad and the Pigeon River come together and join together, James Gilliland cleared a path of land and planted corn, and the first settlement in Cock County came to life. And it would be an opening of the frontier into which many bishops would come. Many great leaders of the church would enter into this country. And those circuit riders rode. Into the land of the thousand smokes they came. No task too formidable, no handicap so great. And on they rode. In 1824, Holston Annual Conference was formed. That first meeting of the annual conference was held up in Southwest Virginia in the home of one of its members. It would be the first of an unbroken line of annual conferences. And tomorrow at Lake Junaluska, the 166th session of the Holston Annual Conference will convene. And there they will tell the stories of success of a church that matches the needs of the people, that plants itself upon the land and brings with that new sought freedom, the one freedom that is above all others, the freedom that God gives to those who follow. It is a magnificent story. It is a story of a people who belong together into a whole. The United Methodist Church is unique in that no one church stands as a solitary instrument apart from the others. We all are one. We are a connectional church. And we take pride in what one another does. This church has never defaulted on one penny that it has committed to all the churches of the connection. This church has been a part of the spreading movement, not sitting as a church in Newport feeding upon itself, but it has always looked out upon the world as its parish. Since the two great churches in Newport came together shortly after unification in 1939, 7 of the ministers who served this church came to this church after being a district superintendent, or they went on to become district superintendents. And 2 sons of the parsonage became district superintendents, showing this church's connection to all the churches of United Methodism. The first minister to serve this church after they came together into one went off to become a professor of philosophy at one of the great universities in Ohio. In the minutes of the quarterly conference of the Newport Circuit in 1878 was this insertion: recommended for a license to preach, George R. Stewart. George R. Stewart came out of this church, went on to be the founder of Lake Junaluska. George R. Stewart came back to Central Church down on Broadway and preached in order to take an offering from a full house to help in the building of Sunday school rooms. One of the great pastors of recent years came to this church from a district. Ned Wiley's grandmother was the founder of the home in Greenville for children. His grandfather was the second president of Emerson Henry College. And on the day that the Methodist Episcopal Church was established in America, their first act was to establish a college, Cokesbury College. And the first act of Holston Conference in 1824, was to authorize a Holston seminary. It didn't materialize, but Emerson Henry College did. And Tennessee Wesleyan College did. And Hiwassee College did. We have been a part and are a part of a great movement to carry the food to the hungry, the water to those who are thirsty, to those who are in prison and those without friends. We have taken seriously the admonition of our Lord as to what we are to be and who we are to become if we are to be His followers. So that today when we put our offering in the offering envelope, 1/4 of our budget goes out to do the things that Christ called us to do. The 3 great colleges of our conference, the great homes for the aging and retired and sick, the home for the children, the many agencies of our conference within reach of our daily travels. But beyond that, we have 13 great seminaries to train aspiring youth to become leaders within the church. 15 great universities, noble names among them: Emory University, Duke University, Syracuse University, Northwestern University, Southern Methodist University, Drew University, and the roll call goes on. And with our colleges spread all over America, we continue to educate with morality and with purpose, and to give students a sense of who they are and allow them to develop inwardly as well as developing outwardly. And we take care of those who are in need. We send every year more than 700 missionaries around the world to hard places. And all of us read last week on the front page of the Knoxville News Sentinel about one of our missionaries in Liberia who is rooting himself there with the people he came to serve, even though people are falling all about him under gunshot. He left a comfortable place in Holston Conference to serve in a difficult place, and his example is life to those he came to serve. 1921, this wilderness of the Great Smokies was filled with superstition and ignorance. And on the centennial event of the church, Pittman Center was established, and a doctor and a teacher was sent in to establish a school and a hospital. And when these mountains were still primitive, teachers went out and brought children in, and the doctor went out and he took care of the needs of the people. And long before public education and public health came into these mountains, the Methodist Church was here with loving hands, feeding the hungry, taking care of the sick, lifting the fallen. That's your church. That's your legacy. And when we go to annual conference tomorrow, we'll hear a report saying that last year, United Methodists like you gave more than $10 million beyond themselves to do what Christ lured us to do. Oh, how I want to set that flame of pride burning in your heart. How I want you to sense the great mission that is now yours. The frontier of the Allegheny is gone, but the frontiers of science and space are before us. With the taking of lives at will, with all of the terrible incidences recorded daily about the world, never has the voice of the church been needed more greatly. We dare not let her be silent. John Wesley stood on his father's tomb and vowed, I go into all the world, and it will be my parish. Francis Asbury will fall heavily upon the back of his stallion, almost at the point of exhaustion, and with one great exhilarating breath shout, live or die, I must ride. And after 45 years, he died of exhaustion. And the unnamed circuit riders who rode upon the banks of the Nolichucky and the French Broad and the Pigeon, those who lived in hovels, who preached under the trees and whose names were never recorded, set the standards for which we must follow. And so you, the United Methodists of Newport, can take your hat off to the past, but must take off your coat to the future. And now this. It is you that makes our church great. And only you. The fire and the zeal of the Methodist Church and the United Methodist Church has been the lives of the lay people. Their commitment, your commitment. Rise up, O people of God. Be done with lesser things. Put heart and soul and might to serve the King of Kings. Amen. And now, dear friends, rise and go in peace, and may God's peace go with you.